Hello, once again. This is Grandmaster Stroud, also known as Brother Teacher. This is perhaps one of the greatest, I guess you can say, pet peeves, for lack of a better word, that I have as it relates to martial arts. And I want to ask you a question today. What's your style? Yes, what is your style? And is your style competitive to mine? That's the question. Now, what I mean by that, first of all, let me say this. When I just asked that question to the audience that's watching this video right now, I'm not attacking you personally. It's just a general platform. I'm speaking collectively, whoever you might be. So to say, what's your style and is it compatible to mine? Can you compare your style to mine? And first, I would say most definitely all styles can be compared and be very similar to one another. First of all, I go back to what Bruce Lee said about styles in general. All human beings have two arms and two legs, so we're all fundamentally the same in that sense. So when we usually use the term style, we're saying that there's a difference in us. Not as in human beings, there's no difference, but there's a difference in us as to our methodology and how we perform and our own particular culture and what have you. But that's the primary difference. We can all fundamentally move the same way. So I don't know, that could be a touchy subject or something that's uh, probably the product of a future video for some, maybe not myself, but I don't have a real issue with that. Uh, I'd like to say, as it relates to me, system, albeit when I'm in a martial arts environment, such as a martial arts tournament, seminar, workshop, or what have you, I will use the term style to communicate with those people who have grown up understanding that to be a particular way in their own lives and experiences. But I particularly don't believe in a style per se. I believe in a particular art. For example, we can say Shotokan karate, Wado-ryu karate, Isshin-ryu karate, Kyokushin karate, Shorei-ryu karate, Taekwondo, Tongsudo, Hapkido, Gumdo, Aikido, ju-jitsu, and all of the various rules of jiu-jitsu, judo, uh, Jinindo, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Bagua, Tai Chi Chuan, Xing Yi, Bando, and the list goes on. You see, I don't have a piece of paper reading this. Uh, that's because I've studied the martial arts over two-thirds of my life. But you heard all the so-called styles that I mentioned, but I like to call them systems. Uh, in my particular instance, when I say system, I'm saying something that's composed of tenets of other systems or other arts. Uh, I've been attacked based on a video that I did some time ago, and someone made a statement about, me being some guy that came from somewhere that created his own style or his own system. Well, that is partly true because I did create my own system, and it's really ignorant. The statement being made because it was based on an emotional stance on a video that I did about someone else saying that they could beat Bruce Lee or that they beat Bruce Lee. And for those who already saw that video, you know what I'm talking about, but it's not really relative to this particular conversation or video. But I say that to say this. They made reference to the fact that I created myself, so to speak. And who am I and who did I come up under and this kind of stuff. But let me say this, just for the record. I studied traditional martial arts first, and I studied several traditional martial arts. And what I did at a point in my life after being promoted to black belt and master throughout my life, uh, I knew that I was on a martial arts journey. So I began to synthesize together the best of all of those things that I had studied. Now, one great grandmaster of mine is the Taekwondo legend in Ohio, and he's now, I believe, semi-retired. Is Grandmaster Kwan Wan An. He is my great grandmaster in Taekwondo, but he told me himself one day. This has been many years ago. He said it's hard studying one style, let alone several. He said, I commend you. He made that statement to me because he knew that I was studying ju-jit-su and I was studying the Korean art and I was also studying Chinese Wing Chun and so forth. But he had nothing negative to say about that. He was always a positive and upbeat individual, and he still is to this very day, very, very vibrant, as it were. But if he understood what I was doing, uh, not to say that he was the only one that made a difference in my life as far as me continuing to do what I'm doing, because what made me continue to do what I'm doing is what's already in me. I was born with this. You know, it's not somebody just say you ought to do this particular thing in your life and that's what you do. That's not the issue. But the issue is that I felt like I couldn't continue to carry uh, this particular style or system, if you will, and 15, 20 katas or forms, and then be in another system or style and carry another 15, 20 katas or forms, and then so on. So I felt like I had to break down those things that were beneficial to me, the individual, and that would ultimately be beneficial to my students along the way. So I dismissed a lot of the traditional forms that I had learned, and I created my own forms for my own system, for my own specific needs. And those forms are basically fighting forms. And they have foundational purpose to mean that they're the basis of virtually every aspect of fighting. Now, I didn't really mean to rant on about this, but in a nutshell, my system is from standing to the ground. It's predicated on standing, fighting, standing up, in other words. And when you get to the ground, how to fight on the ground and everything in between. That's basically it, just in case you wanted to know. But I started out earlier asking the question, what's your style, and is your style competitive or comparative to mine? Uh, there's so many karateka, I'll say, because really this kind of centers around the karate styles and or systems, who traditionally over many, many years have always sort of kept at a distance any art that wasn't karate per se. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I was coming up, uh, if you would go to a karate tournament, you'd see majority people wearing dogis, gis for some, or karate uniform. And it would be an open karate tournament, which means that any style or system was invited to come and participate. So you would see people like James Cook, the legendary James Cook. We call him the Cookie Monster or man. Uh, Studied Shaolin Kung Fu. And you see all of these other karatekas. And oftentimes you have to pay your way. So if you have a predominantly uh, dominated tournament of karate people and you have a kung fu person or a couple kung fu people, you're not necessarily treated kindly. And that has been the way it has been for many years. In other words, there's this bias by the karate people that kung fu is less effective than karate is. Now, I experienced that myself. Now, you leave in the comments at the end of this if you experienced this, if you're one of my kung fu friends out there, or any other system for that matter that's outside of karate. Now, mind you, again, I studied karate. I studied kung fu. I also studied jiu-jitsu and then some. But I'm talking about karate and kung fu right now. There were times when a kung fu man would come out and he run his form, and the form would be a beautiful form. It would be an excellently performed kata or form, and you have a panel of all karate people judging it who had no idea what the form was because they never availed themselves to study Chinese arts, and they were strictly Okinawan or Japanese karate, and they would judge that person based on their own standards. That's not fair. It has never been fair. Now, that happened more in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s. But until people like James Cook came along, and people like myself, even in the 80s on up, came along with Zui Kwan or drunken boxing and so forth, and we had to knock down some doors, to be accepted in a lot of karate arenas because karate people just always felt like they were the dominant art and kung fu took the back seat to them, but they had to have that proven to them, on the floor, so to speak. So I remember also several instances where karate guys were sitting on the judging panel, and you would have a kung fu guy come up and he run his form, and a karate instructor would have him come up, one of the judges that is, and ask him to explain the bunkai. Now, we all who study karate know what bunkai is. I mean, what's the purpose of each of those movements that you're doing in the form or that particular movement? What is the science behind what you're doing as you run your kata? And sometimes the Chinese person didn't know what bunkai was, but they would have to kind of, how should I say, not reiterate, but to reinforce what they were trying to say or explain it in a different way. And he would explain what the movement was. But that didn't necessarily garner him any win just because he explained the movements, because it was still oblivious to the karateka what the person was doing who was doing the kung fu form. And so I say that to say this, and from my own personal experience, it's happened to me. I say that to say this again. It is unfortunate that you have people who think that they're an island unto themselves and that everything outside of their community is less than what they are. Can we get rid of the separatism in martial arts? I mean, we're supposed to be brotherhood when we mention the term martial arts. A brotherhood, irrespective of what your system is, your style is, where its origin came from, it doesn't really matter. It's still martial arts. It's supposed to be a martial arts family. And if you hold an event, a tournament, a competition, a championship, and you say it's open to all styles and systems, and when those people do come and they pay their money to participate, and you treat them less than a friend, less than a brother or sister of the martial arts, something is indeed wrong with that. So really, you should question yourself. Do you really represent the thing we call martial arts? It's unfortunate, again, I say, because when people see you performing something that's not what they studied, they can't judge what you do on what they do. Even though we're human beings and we have 2 arms and 2 legs. For example, if you're in Kibadachi, Japanese for horse stance. In Chinese is Mabu, horse stance. If my Mabu in Chinese is different than yours, slightly, the way you learned it in your Japanese system, then why are you penalizing me? Now, if I'm in a Zenkusadachi, that is a front stance in Japanese Okinawan, and you are in a bow stance in Chinese, are you going to penalize me because my stance is different? Question? Yes. Would you do that? I hope not. But it happens all too often where we are comparing ourselves to what someone else is doing and making that the gospel truth. It's not right. My fellow brethren out there in the martial arts community, it's not right. You can't take your karate and judge Chinese system if you know nothing about the Chinese system. After all, karate didn't come first. The Chinese arts have been in existence for thousands of years. Karate has only been a few hundred. Do the math. It's real simple. I just told it to you. If Kung Fu, so-called Kung Fu, if the Chinese martial arts has been in existence for thousands of years, and karate has only been in existence for a few hundred, then why is your karate greater than the Chinese arts? When the karate is a direct descendant of the Chinese arts. Now, for those who haven't done their history, you can do your due diligence and you can look this up on your own, and you will find out that many Chinese masters migrated to Okinawa and Japan, and they taught the Japanese instructors and masters. And they shared some of their systems with them, and you find a lot of tenets or a lot of parts of Japanese systems containing Chinese systems. That's true. So, are you still going to judge Chinese systems based on your Japanese culture, based on your Japanese kata, based on your Japanese techniques? I hope that this would serve as a meaning, or I should say, meaningful way of you evaluating how you do things in karate specifically. Now, I remember when I was coming up, and I would perform, let's say, forms, and I would perform. I can't tell you the name of the form right now. I don't want to share that. That's one of my forms, but it was a drunken form, and not very many people in the Midwest was doing Zui-Kwan or drunken boxing, and so I would go to tournaments and I would have standing ovations over karate katas in the forms competition, and I would win grand champion and first place in my division so many times, back to back, and people even hated to see me come to tournaments, who were competing, I should say. Other black belts and masters would hate to see me coming, because my form would be such, and I'm speaking out of humility when I say this, so I'm not bragging, I'm just stating a fact. But my form would be such, again, that the audience would stand up and start applauding every time I perform. And I would have people many times from the audience and even other martial artists, and to include the karate practitioners, would ask me, was I going to fight that day, or could they come to my school and train with me and things like that. And I said all that to say this. You never know who you're going to come in contact in your martial arts journey. And we all have something of value to share. Everyone is important. As you noticed earlier, or if you go back and rewind this video, you recall me mentioning several martial arts styles and systems. All of those are important. They're all valuable. We as human beings are all valuable. None of us, to include myself, and I speak to my shame, none of us are any better than the next person, no matter who we are, who our instructors were, and where we think we came from and what we think we know. And I have 45 years at doing this thing called martial arts, and I don't think that I'm the best. And I don't think that, my crap don't stink. That's not me. And I just want to say that in sort of a disclaimer, if you will, so people that are watching this video don't think that I'm trying to be boisterous and, stand on a soapbox and say that my system is better than anyone else's. I'm not saying that. My system is just simply that. It's brother-teacher system, Jin-Endo. Now, getting back real quick, and I'll try to conclude this. The guys that were saying that you created your own system or style, and, who is this guy? But you know what? That's probably one of the most ignorant statements I've ever heard. Because every martial arts style, every martial arts system was created by someone. And yes, they were individuals that created their own systems. So who is the karate police that says, oh, you're not able to create a system of martial arts anymore? It died back then in the 30s or the 16th century or the 15th century or 1,000 years ago. You can't create anything in modern day time. That is just so crazy. Men have created systems forever. Artists don't stop at Van Gogh. They don't stop at Leonardo da Vinci. They're still current artists. Irrespective of what your particular art is, be it in the genre of music, rock and roll, jazz, blues, it doesn't matter. People are already, they're always discovering self and always progressing. That's just the way the world is. And when you tell a man that he can't create something, then you probably don't understand the world that you live in. Because if I think back in terms of martial arts history, Bruce Lee created Jeet-Kune-Do, his own system. And Jeet-Kune-Do is practiced all over the world. And Bruce Lee's is the most popular martial arts name still. After over 30, 40 years since he's been dead, he's still the most popular martial arts name. Now, also, just in case you don't realize this or you forgot maybe, Ron Van Cleef, Chinese Goju-Ryu, his art. The Grandmaster, a great mentor of mine, I didn't know him personally, but he was a mentor of mine in the martial arts, Moses Powell from New York, Sunuka's Jiu-Jitsu. He created that system. And his instructor was Professor V. And then there had been people after him who created subsequent systems under that same name. Sunuka's Jiu-Jitsu. Who else is there? There is even Taekwondo. It has only existed since the 1950s under Che. Him and a group of other Korean masters came together and they named this art. From all of these different other Korean arts, they combined together. They said we just have to have one name to recognize or to represent Korea. We'll call it Taekwondo. So it's only been around since the 50s. That's not that long ago. What other art could we think of right now where somebody created an art in modern day times? How about the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system? Now, the Gracie system hasn't been around for 200 years or 100 years. There's a lot of schools of Jiu-Jitsu, but the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system hasn't been around that long either. That's just to name a few. So, go figure. That was all I really had to say. So, in my summation, I'm going to say, stop judging other arts based on your art, especially if those arts have something to bring to the table that are effective for its practitioner. Now, I've said in time past that if you want to say that you have an effective martial arts system, there are certain things that you must have in place. If it works, it has to be tried. It has to be tested. If it works effectively in a fighting situation or scenario, then it has power. It has teeth. It has strength. But if it doesn't work, scientifically, if it doesn't work, from a practical standpoint, if it doesn't work in modern day times, then you need to go revisit what you're doing in terms of a martial arts system. That's all I'm saying. This is Brother Teacher. Please leave some comments, and I'll see you in the next video.